Have you ever sat down to write a speech or deliver a message, only to feel the overwhelming weight of knowing exactly what you think needs to be said? What if I told you that in that moment, there's something even deeper you can connect with? Something that transcends your own sense of certainty and control? In this world, there's a constant tug of war between what we think we know and the raw truth of who we are at our core. As we step into the vulnerable space of communication, particularly when writing a speech, we're faced with the opportunity to truly tap into something that goes beyond ego or surface knowledge. The journey to knowing who we truly are begins within. We often search outwardly for validation, knowledge, and approval, but the most profound understanding we can gain comes from looking inward. Self-awareness is the foundation of everything. It is the ability to reflect on our own thoughts, emotions, and actions with a level of honesty that can be uncomfortable, but ultimately liberating. When we understand ourselves, our strengths, our weaknesses, and our true motivations, only then can we begin to communicate in a way that is deeply authentic and meaningful. Self-awareness is not about perfection or about constantly being in control. In fact, it's about recognizing that we will never fully control every aspect of our being, and that's okay. It's about accepting that we are complex, multidimensional people with both light and shadow within us. To be self-aware is to acknowledge the places within us that need healing and the places that are already whole. The power of this awareness comes not from judgment or self-criticism, but from compassion. Compassion for ourselves and for the humanity of others. This awareness is crucial when we step into any form of communication, particularly in a speech or presentation. It shapes how we connect with our audience and the way our words are received. If we are not aware of our own biases, limitations, or unconscious fears, we risk projecting those onto others. We might, without realizing it, distance ourselves from the very people we aim to serve. But when we are mindful of our inner world, when we understand the dynamics of our own emotions and behaviors, we can better empathize with the experiences of those around us. At the core of self-awareness is the ability to reflect. This is where vulnerability enters the conversation. It's easy to say we know something, to profess our expertise, but it takes true courage to reflect on our own limitations, fears, and blind spots. This process of reflection opens the door to growth. Without it, we are simply moving through life on autopilot, unaware of the subtle ways we are being shaped by past experiences, unconscious biases, and habitual thought patterns. Self-awareness allows us to pause, step back, and reconsider how we approach the world, and more importantly, how we interact with others in that world. When we practice self-awareness, we also begin to notice the stories we tell ourselves. These stories often define our actions and shape our perspectives. We may tell ourselves that we are unworthy of success, or that we have to be perfect in everything we do, or that we are not enough. These narratives can limit our potential and cloud our judgment. But the more self-aware we become, the more we realize we have the power to rewrite those stories. We have the power to choose how we define ourselves, how we respond to challenges, and how we present ourselves to the world. The story we tell can be one of growth, learning, and endless possibility. Ultimately, self-awareness empowers us to move through life with intention and purpose. When we know who we are, when we understand the emotions and thoughts that drive us, we can choose our actions with clarity. We stop reacting from a place of fear or defensiveness, and instead, we begin responding with intention. It allows us to show up in the world with our full, authentic selves, not hiding behind masks or facades, but embracing our imperfections as part of our unique beauty. The more self-aware we become, the more power we have to influence the world around us. Self-awareness in its truest sense is the gateway to living a life of authenticity. It's the key to connecting with others in a way that feels real, grounded, and meaningful. As you continue your journey, remember, the more you know yourself, the more you can give to the world. The more aware you become of your own power, the more you empower those around you to do the same. Beloved, in a world that often rewards certainty and expertise, there is a quiet power in embracing the vulnerability of knowing less. We live in a time when everyone seems to be expected to have all the answers, to know the solutions before even asking the questions. But what if the real magic lies not in having all the answers, but in the willingness to admit that we don't have it all figured out? That, to me, is what being human is all about. This is a powerful shift, one that can free us from the constant pressure to perform and push us toward deeper learning and connection. At first, the idea of embracing vulnerability by knowing less can feel unsettling. Our egos crave the comfort of certainty, and we often feel that if we don't know something, we are somehow less capable or less worthy. This fear of inadequacy can keep us stuck, preventing us from taking risks and stepping into new opportunities. But the truth is, there is a quiet strength and admitting that we don't know. It's in this very vulnerability that growth happens. When we let go of the need to appear like we have it all together, we open ourselves to new insights, new perspectives, and new possibilities that would remain closed to us if we clung to false certainty. Knowing less is not a sign of weakness. It is an invitation to learn. There is power in acknowledging that we are not experts in everything. The desire to be all-knowing can often limit us, preventing us from exploring ideas outside of our current understanding. When we embrace the unknown, we break free from the prison of our own self. It's in the gaps of knowledge where innovation occurs, where creativity thrives, and where we have the opportunity to stretch ourselves beyond what we thought possible. We stop pretending to be infallible, and instead we choose to explore, to inquire, and to grow. This vulnerability, the ability to admit that we know less, also opens us up to deeper, more authentic relationships with others. When we show up in conversations, not as experts, but as learners, we create space for real dialogue and connection. There is no need to hide behind the walls of superiority or the masks of certainty. By admitting that we don't know everything, we invite others to share their wisdom, their perspectives, and their experiences. This creates an environment of mutual respect, where everyone feels valued, heard, and understood. The beauty of knowing less is that it encourages collaboration and community instead of competition and division. Letting go of the need to be the expert also allows us to embrace humility. Humility is not about downplaying our strengths or belittling our accomplishments. Rather, it is about recognizing that we are all on a journey, each of us with our own unique knowledge and experiences. When we acknowledge that we don't know it all, we give others permission to do the same. It's in this shared vulnerability that true learning occurs. We begin to see others not as competitors, but as partners in the process of growth. Humility creates space for empathy, understanding, and the deep connection that comes from shared experiences. In the long run, embracing the vulnerability of knowing less is what allows us to live with a sense of freedom. We no longer feel the burden of having to be perfect, to know every answer, or to have everything under control. Instead, we approach life with curiosity and openness, knowing that the process of learning is never ending. We give ourselves permission to be human. Emotionally and motion, we give ourselves permission to be human, imperfect, evolving, and constantly in motion. This freedom to not know everything is what allows us to show up fully in the present moment, to take risks, and to grow into the best versions of ourselves. It is a mindset that empowers us to embrace life with an open heart and an open mind, ready to discover what we don't yet know. When we embrace the vulnerability of knowing less, we allow ourselves to step into the unknown with courage, curiosity, and authenticity. We break free from the prison of perfectionism and step into the freedom of possibility. The more we release the need to know, the more room we create for growth, connection, and transformation. Beloved, it is in knowing less that we are truly free to become more. Beloved, the ego's need to be right is one of the most powerful forces that can shape our lives, often without us even realizing it. We all carry an inner drive that craves validation, the desire to prove that we are knowledgeable, worthy, and competent. This drive can manifest in many ways, whether it's in the way we communicate, the decisions we make, or the interactions we have with others. On the surface, it may appear as a simple desire to be understood or respected, but beneath it lies a deep-seated fear. Fear of being wrong, fear of being judged, and most profoundly, fear of being inadequate. This need to be right often binds us to a limited and rigid way of thinking, preventing growth and connection. The irony, beloved, is that the more we try to prove ourselves right, the more we close ourselves off from true understanding. We become so entrenched in our own perspectives that we lose the ability to listen, to truly hear what others are saying. The need to be right puts us in a defensive stance, where we are more focused on winning the argument than on engaging in an authentic exchange. It's as if our worth is tied to being correct, and if we admit to being wrong, we fear we might lose our value in the eyes of others. But the truth is, when we insist on being right at all costs, we are not only limiting our ability to learn, but we are also closing ourselves off from the richness that comes from engaging in open, honest dialogue. This need to be right is also deeply tied to our sense of identity. The ego thrives on validation and external approval. It builds its self-worth on the accumulation of correct answers, achievements, and accolades. But what happens when we face a situation where we are not right or where we don't have the answers? The ego can become defensive, seeking to protect itself from the threat of humiliation or failure. It lashes out, becoming combative or dismissive in order to defend its position. Yet, in these moments when we are willing to step back from our ego's need to be right, we create an opening for growth and transformation. Admitting we don't know everything is not a weakness. It is an invitation to evolve. Letting go of the need to be right also opens the door to deeper empathy and connection. When we free ourselves from the grip of the ego, we are better able to listen to others with an open heart. We are no longer trying to outsmart or outmaneuver them, but instead we are engaging with them in a way that values their perspectives, even if they differ from our own. This shift allows for more authentic conversations, where we are willing to learn from each other rather than compete for dominance. It creates space for mutual respect, where everyone's voice can be heard and appreciated. In this space, true collaboration can occur, where the goal is not to be right, but to understand and grow together. The need to be right also creates barriers to true self-awareness. It is in our moments of vulnerability, when we admit we don't know, when we accept that we are wrong, that we truly get to know ourselves. When we are constantly striving to prove our rightness, we close ourselves off from the opportunity to reflect on our own flaws, biases, and misconceptions. We become stuck in a cycle of self-reinforcement, only seeking out information or perspectives that confirm our beliefs. This limits our capacity for growth. However, when we are willing to let go of the need to be right, we open ourselves to the humbling experience of learning, reflection, and change. In these moments, we discover more about who we are, why we hold certain beliefs, and how we can become more compassionate, understanding, and open-minded. Ultimately, the ego's need to be right is a barrier to the freedom and authenticity we crave. It keeps us trapped in a constant cycle of performance, where we are more concerned with appearance than with truth. But the true liberation comes when we are willing to drop the act, to be honest about our limitations, and to embrace the possibility of being wrong. When we are willing to let go of our ego's grip, we allow ourselves to be more present, more connected, and more real. We no longer need to constantly prove ourselves, we can simply be. And in that space, we find peace, growth, and the authentic connection that we all seek. Beloved, the next time you feel the urge to be right, pause and reflect. Ask yourself, what am I protecting? What am I afraid of losing? The freedom that comes from letting go of the need to be right will set you free in ways you never imagined. In embracing vulnerability and accepting that we don't have all the answers, we open ourselves to the wisdom that comes from true humility and a willingness to grow. Beloved, in a world that often prizes perfection above all else, we are constantly bombarded with messages telling us that we must be flawless in everything we do. From the way we look, to the way we speak, to the way we perform at work or in our personal lives, there's a silent pressure to appear perfect. We spend so much of our lives striving to meet these external standards, believing that once we attain perfection, we will finally feel worthy and accepted. But the truth is, perfection is an illusion. It is a fleeting, ever-changing ideal that will never be fully realized. What is far more powerful and far more freeing is choosing authenticity over perfection. Authenticity, beloved, is the courageous act of showing up as your true self, flaws and all. It's about peeling back the layers of armor we've built to protect ourselves from judgment and simply being who we are in all our rawness and vulnerability. Authenticity doesn't ask us to be perfect. Instead, it calls us to be real, to embrace our imperfections and to step into the world with all the messy beauty that comes with being human. When we choose authenticity over perfection, we begin to liberate ourselves from the relentless pursuit of an unattainable goal and open the door to true self-expression and connection. Perfectionism, on the other hand, is a trap. It's an endless cycle of striving, never feeling truly satisfied, and constantly fearing failure. It keeps us stuck in a loop of self-criticism and doubt, convincing us that unless we meet an idealized standard, we are not enough. But when we choose authenticity, we free ourselves from this cycle. We give ourselves permission to make mistakes, to learn, and to grow without the weight of having to get everything right. Perfectionism leads us to believe that our worth is conditional upon our success, but authenticity reminds us that we are enough as we are, without needing to prove anything to anyone. Choosing authenticity also allows us to connect with others on a deeper level. People are drawn to authenticity because it is relatable, genuine, and human. When we let go of the need to be perfect, we give others the permission to do the same. We create space for real conversations where we can share our struggles, our joys, our failures, and our triumphs. In these moments of true connection, we discover that we are not alone in our imperfections. The more we embrace our authentic selves, the more we invite others to do the same, creating an environment where vulnerability is met with empathy and understanding. There is also immense freedom in embracing authenticity because it allows us to stop comparing ourselves to others. When we are focused on being perfect, we are often measuring ourselves against the standards set by others. We look at the lives of those around us and think, if only I could be like them, I would be enough. But when we embrace authenticity, we let go of comparison. We stop chasing someone else's version of success or beauty, and instead we create our own path, guided by our values, our passions, and our unique journey. We become less concerned with fitting into someone else's mold and more focused on carving out space for ourselves to be truly seen and heard. Furthermore, authenticity is what brings real fulfillment into our lives. It is in embracing who we truly are, imperfections, quirks, and all, that we begin to feel truly at peace with ourselves. We no longer feel the need to put on a mask or hide behind a facade. Instead, we stand in our truth unapologetically. This peace comes from knowing that we are enough just as we are. We are not defined by our achievements, our appearances, or the expectations of others. We are defined by the essence of who we are, the raw, unfiltered, authentic version of ourselves. And when we choose to live from that place, we find joy, contentment, and fulfillment that far outweigh any fleeting sense of satisfaction that perfection could ever bring. Ultimately, authenticity is the gateway to a richer, more meaningful life. It allows us to experience the fullness of our emotions, the depth of our relationships, and the beauty of our unique selves. Perfectionism may promise us a sense of accomplishment or admiration, but it cannot give us the peace that comes with simply being who we are. When we embrace authenticity, we embrace our humanity, and in doing so, we allow ourselves to experience life more fully, with all its ups and downs, its imperfections and beauty, and in that space, we are free. Beloved, remember that you are enough just as you are. You don't need to be perfect to be worthy of love, success, or fulfillment. Your authenticity is the gift you bring to the world, and it is the most powerful thing you can offer. Embrace who you are, imperfections and all, and let go of the illusion of perfection. In that freedom, you will discover the beauty of your true self. Beloved, there is a profound act of bravery in showing the world who you truly are. In a society that often values conformity, there is immense courage in stepping forward as your full, authentic self. It is easy to hide behind masks, to present only the version of ourselves that we think others will approve of. But this only leads to a life of quiet disconnection. When we deny parts of ourselves out of fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of not being enough, we rob both ourselves and the world of the gift of our true essence. But when we summon the courage to show up as we are in all our complexity, we unlock a life of deeper connection, deeper joy, and deeper fulfillment. It takes courage, beloved, to be vulnerable enough to show our full selves. We are often taught from an early age to hide our flaws, our insecurities, our imperfections. We are conditioned to present a picture of success, of strength, of certainty, even when we feel none of those things. The fear of being seen as weak, as flawed, or as incomplete keeps us in the shadows, playing small and holding back parts of ourselves that are just as worthy of love and acceptance as any other. But the truth is, there is nothing more powerful than showing up authentically, allowing the world to see not just your strengths, but your vulnerabilities too. It is in this act of courage that you begin to live fully and experience the true power of connection with others. The courage to show your full self also means embracing all of who you are, the parts of you that feel confident and the parts that feel unsure, the parts that shine and the parts that have been wounded, the parts that are loud and the parts that are quiet. It means accepting your whole self, your past, your present, and your future. Not as a series of disconnected pieces, but as a beautifully unique story that only you can tell. This requires a deep trust in yourself, a trust that who you are is enough, even when the world may not always see you the way you see yourself. It requires letting go of the need to be perfect and stepping into the freedom that comes with simply being human. In this process of showing your full self, you will encounter fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of not being understood. But it is in walking through these fears that you will find your true power. Every time you choose to be real, to stand in your truth, to let others see you for who you truly are, you build strength. You develop resilience. You create an unshakable foundation of self-acceptance, because you no longer need external validation to feel worthy. You know that you are enough, not because of how others see you, but because you are living in alignment with who you truly are. This is where true courage lies, not in the absence of fear, but in the willingness to act in spite of it. When you have the courage to show your full self, you invite others to do the same. Your authenticity becomes a beacon, a light that encourages others to step out from behind their own masks and embrace their own vulnerabilities. You become a part of a larger movement of people who are no longer willing to hide in the shadows, people who are choosing to be seen, to be heard, and to be understood. This is where real connection begins, not in the polished, curated versions of ourselves, but in the raw, unfiltered reality of our human experience. When we show up fully, we create space for others to show up fully as well. And together, we create a culture of empathy, of understanding, and of belonging. Ultimately, the courage to show your full self is the key to living a life of authenticity, joy, and purpose. When you allow yourself to be seen for who you truly are, you step into a life that is aligned with your deepest desires, your true passions, and your most authentic self. You are no longer hiding behind fear or shame. You are living in the fullness of your being. This is where your true power lies. Not in perfection, not in approval, but in the raw, real expression of who you are. You are enough, just as you are, and the world is waiting for you to show up in your full glory. Beloved, know that the courage to show your full self is not a one-time decision. It is a practice, a way of being that you continue to cultivate each and every day. Every time you choose authenticity over fear, you take another step toward living the life you were meant to live. Embrace your full self, the messy, imperfect, beautiful whole of who you are. When you do, you will discover the freedom that comes from showing up exactly as you are, and the deep connections that follow will fill your life with love, meaning, and purpose. Beloved, in a world that often places value on appearances, success, and external validation, it is easy to fall into the trap of trying to impress others. We are conditioned to believe that our worth is measured by how we are perceived, by the approval we receive, and by the admiration of those around us. This desire to impress, to constantly prove ourselves to others, can create a life of constant striving and stress, where we feel like we are never truly enough unless we meet the standards set by the world. But what if, instead of chasing external approval, we chose to embrace the freedom of simply being ourselves without the burden of needing to impress anyone? Letting go of the need to impress begins with recognizing the truth that your worth is not dependent on the opinions or expectations of others. You do not have to perform, to put on a show, or to prove anything to anyone. The moment we stop seeking validation from external sources, we begin to tap into a deeper, more grounded sense of self. This doesn't mean we no longer care about how others perceive us. It means that we recognize our inherent value comes from within. When we free ourselves from the need to impress, we stop measuring our success by the approval of others and instead focus on our own growth, our own integrity, and our own authenticity. The need to impress is often driven by fear, the fear of rejection, the fear of not being good enough, and the fear of being judged. We worry that if we are not seen as impressive, we will be dismissed or overlooked. But in this constant quest to win the approval of others, we lose sight of the most important thing, ourselves. We begin to live our lives for others, making choices based on what we think will garner praise or admiration, rather than what truly resonates with us. This disconnection from our authentic selves creates a life of exhaustion and dissatisfaction. When we let go of the need to impress, we create space for more intentional, fulfilling choices that align with our values and our inner truth. Embracing the freedom of letting go of the need to impress also means we can stop comparing ourselves to others. The pursuit of impressing others often involves measuring ourselves against the standards set by those around us. We compare our successes, our possessions, and even our appearance to what we see in others, believing that somehow we are falling short. But when we let go of this need to impress, we stop competing and start celebrating our own unique journey. We recognize that everyone is on their own path, and the only true measure of success is how aligned we are with our own purpose and values. There is no need to chase someone else's version of success. We can create our own. Letting go of the need to impress also invites deeper, more genuine relationships into our lives. When we stop trying to be someone we're not, we open ourselves up to authentic connection. We no longer have to put on a mask or play a role in our interactions with others. We can show up as we truly are, imperfect and vulnerable, and in doing so, invite others to do the same. It is in this space of authenticity where real love, trust, and connection are built. When we let go of the need to impress, we free ourselves from the weight of pretense, and we begin to form relationships based on who we truly are, not who we think we should be. The freedom that comes from letting go of the need to impress is liberating. It allows us to live our lives from a place of joy, not anxiety. Instead of constantly worrying about how we are perceived, we can focus on what brings us fulfillment. Whether that's pursuing our passions, nurturing our relationships, or simply being present in the moment. When we let go of the need to impress, we release the weight of unnecessary expectations and we begin to live with a sense of ease and peace. The pressure to perform dissipates, and in its place is a life lived with purpose, integrity, and true happiness. We no longer need to prove ourselves to anyone. We are already enough, just as we are.